These are scary stories that happened to my brother and I, who later founded the site Spookylinks.com. These are the stories that made us believe in the supernatural. Scary story number 2, The Man in the Field. During this time of the age 14, my friend from down the road told us all about this crazy man living in the cornfield at the end of the road, on the dead-end road we lived on. He explained that the man would hide in the cornfield and jump and rape people who traveled through the cornfield. So, we grabbed our bikes to see this man. It was Brandon, myself, and Gerald, my twin brother, that proceeded out to the cornfield. We rode off and started down the trail in the cornfield. It zigzagged and went on for what seemed like forever, but we didn't find anything. I thought it was just a weird story our friend was telling us, because my brother and I were into ghosts, monsters, and scary stuff. Until suddenly we came to a clearing. The trail ended into trees with a clearing and some buildings, old and decrepit. We got off our bikes and put them down as we walked through what looked like an old kennel and fallen water tower. We explored. There were old wells and old kennels. I found an intact skeleton of a dog that was lying down. We continued as we found an old black pickup truck. No one was inside. We continued exploring. Suddenly there was a bark that rang out. We jumped and turned around, looking. Another bark, and we saw further forward was a broken well and opened up at ground level, and a tree right beside it. From one of the branches was a water hose that tied around the base of the tree to a hanging branch, then down into the well. The hose was moving. We cautiously walked down toward, hearing noises and whimpers. We peered down and saw a dog hanging by his neck at the end of the hose, with a man stabbing into him with a knife. We stood silent, but Brandon gave out a noise. The man shot his eyes up, seeing the three of us. We began to run. We raced off toward our bikes and back through the field and home. A year later, we were telling a friend about the incident. His name was Gary. He didn't believe us, so one day, after school, on a half day, we took him out there. We grabbed Brandon, and once again, all snuck out there. This time there was no cornfield, just acres of open land we trekked down to get to the end of the trail into the trees. We did so. This time it was boring. We explored. The kennels didn't have the dog anymore. The tree with the hose tied to it was still there, but nothing scary for us or Gary. We were hoping to find the man out there, but I started thinking, why would he be out there? He obviously didn't live out here. So we explored the other wells. One well had an outhouse attached to it, and an open well beside. We found lots of old bottles around there. So, like any teenagers, we began to break the bottles into the well. It was spring and just after a rain, warm and muggy, and ground in places were moist. We stayed out there for a few hours busting the bottles and finding more, when we heard a 3-wheeler all-terrain vehicle to the right of us. I turned and saw on the other side of the barbed wire fence we went under to get to this well, a man with a shotgun on an ATV looking back at me. The same man in the well a year before. I turned to Gary and Gerald to run. Gerald began to run, followed by Gary. But Brandon didn't seem to be in a hurry. I watched Amanda drive off to get around the fence, a little ways down, as I pushed Brandon to start running. We quickly came up to a barbed wire fence, where I dove over and found myself in 3 inches of water, where a snake rushed past my head. I quickly jumped up and away from the snakes. Gerald and Gary were with me, as Brandon's pants were caught by the barbed wire fence, and he casually unhooked himself. Gerald rushed over to Brandon as the guy on the ATV neared the same fence, aiming his gun. Gerald, next to Brandon, pointed at the man and said, "Look." Brandon finally looked over, seeing the man jumped off to the side, ripping his pants as a shot rang out. All four of us raced down backyards as the man shot once more, then turned around and followed us on the other side of the fence. Gary was freaking out, trying to make decisions. But my brother and I were in survival mode and calmly took charge of the situation. We ducked down, watching the man drive past a few times trying to find us as we made our way back home to my house. When we finally did, the remaining day we watched the black truck travel back and forth down the street. A month later, my parents went on vacation, a cruise, and flew my grandmother out to watch us. One night, since we had a big screen TV in the outside room that we turned the garage into a game room and put our old bunk beds out there for guests, and if we ever wanted to sleep out there watching movies, which that's exactly what we wanted to do. We watched movies and slowly began to fall asleep and moved to the bunk beds. Myself on top and Gerald on bottom. From our bunk beds, there was a table with chairs, 2 steps leading inside where the kitchen was. Next to the door of the kitchen, we helped our dad build a wall between the washer and dryer and the room. He even built a big screen into the wall. We fell asleep, putting the TV on a timer to turn off. The rest of this happened to my brother, so this is what he told me what happened. Sometime in the night, he casually woke up, still tired, and peered into the darkness, looking out of the bottom of the bunk bed, seeing the green light of the microwave in the kitchen. Since his eyes were still adjusting to the light, it was just a giant green blur. He saw the round end of the chair in the light, causing a half-moon shape of the green of the microwave. He stared at it for a moment when it moved. He moved his head a bit to find the end of the chair again, to make that half-moon shape with the light again, but it moved again. At this time, his eyes were fully adjusted, and he saw a shadowy figure standing just past the chair in the doorway. Gerald needed to do something, so he began to reach up and tap my face to wake me up. He slowly did, but I wasn't waking up. At this time, the shadowy figure turned and crouched down to be eye level with Gerald. That's when Gerald yelled my name and grabbed my face. I awoke to a sound of banging on the wall and washer and dryer as if somebody were running away. It ended when Gerald's skateboard propped up back there fell down. "What the hell was that?" I yelled as I sat up looking around. I quickly jumped down and grabbed my dad's pocket knife, which was conveniently on an end table nearby. We turned on all the lights, and no one was there. Gerald went to the window and watched somebody running from the house into a black truck. But I checked all the doors. Everything was locked. We went and woke up our grandmother. Even after we moved out of the house, at the age of 23, for kicks, we'd tell people the story about the man in the cornfield. We'd even go out there. Since then, it's been cleaned up and making way for new home developments. But the wells are still there, and the tree with the hose is still there too. We're currently 29 in 2016.